So, hi, this is the Instagram geotagging group. I'm Rutvi.
I'm Andrea.
I'm Lingyue.
We'll be just taking you through a brief overview of our project. We're looking at the Instagram geotagging feature, which we'll be looking at as a way for advertisers to personalize their advertisements for consumers. We just want to start by showing you our overview video, which takes you through what Instagram geotagging is and like how we see it. Right. So, thank you. This is a very, very quick overview of how geotagging works on Instagram. But basically, what geotagging is it's the process of adding geographical identification metadata to various media, including photos and text on Instagram. And so, by sharing the locations on Instagram allow geotagging to help find people based on their location, either industries or businesses or other users nearby. And geotagging divides accounts into various groups based on their geographical location, facilitates social media user interaction. And so Instagram launched the use of geotags as a feature on posts in 2017. Millions of users tag their location on Instagram posts and stories every single day.
So we have a full version of socio-technical analysis on our website, but I will just briefly introduce that. So our main point is that geotagging helps digital ads find target audience faster and more accurately. So based on the location information they collect from the geotags, advertisers can be very hyper-specific about their consumers. So before geotagging was invented, digital advertisers used to be very passive in placing ads on social media, but now they can proactively create targeted strategies to better reach out to their audience.
So we created a map which explains the relationship between Instagram posts and the users on one side and the advertisers on the other side. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than we're making it sound, but there's several nodes that are all interconnected with each other, that all influence each other when it comes to location tagging and using those location tags to reach out to people. This is essentially how the system works. Obviously, there's a lot more going into it algorithm wise that we don't really know. But again, like a basic picture of how it works.
Just to add a little bit more on it, basically all the posts that are shared on Instagram can be accessed through the third parties. They can create APIs, they can create third-party codes to access and download all these posts. For the technical part, we kind of break through a little bit into how this geotagging works. Based on our research, we found that location data are majorly being found through GPS, Wi-Fi, and your mobile data into your mobile device. So they're stored in the data set. And then with the switch of this user permission, Instagram gets the data and then get stored in those data set actually managed by Meta, which is originally was Facebook. And then with recommendations algorithms, they can suggest on what locations that you're tagging. So basically, if you're posting anything, they will have a list of recommendations based on the location they already gathered. So they recommend this for you. And the other way of they recommend is not through location they track from your phone, but actually from your manual input. So you can manually input, let's say, Georgetown CCT, and they will find the best location they found it for you. With these two recommendation sources, they recommend it on the Instagram app, and then you can tag it either in post or your story. And then with that post and story that you tagged, there's a link that you can find the location pages like we showed in the video. the key point here is kind of the user permission. The user permission, which is very interesting, that Apple actually requires app developers to provide a very clean and clear description of what this location gathering is. So Instagram wrote that Instagram uses to make some features work, which is not clear and clean enough to explain what these features are. And then from our analysis, since they allow you to manually input, they don't actually need your data stored in the mobile devices to know your location if you want to tag your location. So that leaves us two questions. One question is that since Apple and Android has a similar requirement system, that they left the users with this decision of how and what information can be accessed, but actually users don't know like how to what extent these information are, which leave us to doubt like, is this good enough for users to make this decision? And the other thing is that this architecture basically allow users to put in any location they wanted, not exactly the location linked to the post. So if I'm not in a Georgetown CTT and I post a selfie and I just tag it, but if I'm not a Georgetown CTT student, they will just hypothesize that I am a student here. So that leaves us some misinformation, disinformation.
So yeah, these are the questions that we had. We would love to hear your thoughts, your insights, any questions that you might have about this as well.
Wow, yeah, it's so cool. So I have a ton of questions. So some context is I do not really use Instagram, so I technically have an account, and like I've tried to get into it a couple of times, and it just doesn't seem like it's a platform that I actually am drawn to for whatever reason. Okay, so a lot of my questions are probably stupid questions that like Instagram users know the answer to, but I don't because I'm not an Instagram user. This one I don't think is something that most Instagram users would know, but I think, you know, it's important to know to understand technically how all this is working. So when you say they add a geotag to a post, Instagram is retrieving your geographic location from your smartphone. And your smartphone knows your geographic location because of some combination of GPS, Wi-Fi, and mobile data?
Yes.
And how does that work?
Are you asking about how your mobile device gets your location?
How does your mobile device know where you are? Yeah.
You're asking this part, right? Like,
yeah.
So basically, they have like these APIs of like, API stands for application programming
interface. Yeah.
Yeah. GPS is like the satellite that locates all these mobile devices. So as long as your phone or your laptop has the GPS on, they kind of know the rough location you are. And then also Wi-Fi and mobile data is basically your phone is connected to this Wi-Fi. Say like here it's Georgetown Wi-Fi, then Georgetown Wi-Fi has this information included in this Wi-Fi. So
it has geographic information.
Yeah, they have this geographic information already. And also your mobile data, it's even more clear that so when the AT&T or Verizon sends you the signals, they know where you are. So if you're stuck in Yellow Mountain or something, like without any signals, then nobody will know your location. But as long as you're connected to the signals, the location are there already.
Right. So I assume with the Wi-Fi, it knows where you are based on your IP address, like based on like the websites that you're accessing through the IP address that you have. Similarly with mobile data, through like the service provider that you have, they know your location based on the data that they've collected on your location.
And how fine-grained is that?
That really,
like, would you know that I'm in my office, or you would just know I'm in this building, or?
Yeah, I think it actually depends. When I was looking at Apple's like official statement, they don't tell how precise it is, but they just say it's very precise. Yeah. So it's actually a black box that we don't know yet. I think for military purposes, I think they probably know more precise, but they, and then when Apple is providing this function to app developers like Instagram or Facebook, they kind of provide you two options. One is updated real time and updated. The other one is rough.
But all of that raw data is the same no matter what app is accessing it, right? So you're just flipping a switch, turning it on or off, but the data stream itself is not varied depending on the app.
Yeah. No matter you permit it or not, it's already tracked and stored. Unless you turn off your Wi-Fi, turn off your GPS, and turn off your mobile data.
Okay, so that's another question I have. So is there a separate in your map here, right? There's this veto point where the user has to give permission.
Yeah.
Is there a separate veto point where the user has to give permission to the smartphone to collect location device, period? Or is the only way to prevent that from happening is by turning off these relevant signals, turning off your GPS or your mobile data or whatever?
I don't think there, at least for current most Apple devices and Android devices, I don't think there is a user permission request for users. They're just open by default.
Yeah.
Okay, so the locations, it sounds like, can be user generated. So like if I go to a new place, I can give it a name and make a Facebook location and then put it on Instagram.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Fake as well.
So like I could name my house,
and
then anytime somebody came to my house, they could like tag it.
That's correct. That's
Professor Bode's house.
Yeah.
They can do it.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but
So Facebook says that is a feature that they've made because it's helpful for businesses to promote themselves and to allow customers who come to their businesses to tag where they've been. But obviously that can be used maliciously or like in a non-business sense or in a because like there's so many times on Instagram, I'm looking for like a silly location to tag my post as. Like I don't want to tag the actual location that I'm at, but I want to find like a silly location that's related to the post that I'm posting. And there's so many posts, so there's so many locations that aren't any geographical location. They're just something completely wild. Like sad and bored or whatever, that are not actually located in any geographical place. So it's interesting that Facebook and therefore by extension Instagram allows you to do that.
That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What about a location that is tagged to a specific location? Mm-hmm. So like, okay, I'm like a depressing person, so I always go to like worst case scenario, right? Uh-huh. So if I wanted to like mess with someone, right? Can I tag their house even if I've never been in it as like the bitch's house or that slut on W Street or like something like that? Yeah. I can do that even if my device has never been to that location.
No.
Okay, so there's no limitations on creating this.
Not as far as we've seen, because when we were trying to create our own location a couple of days ago, that's what we could do. What it allows you to do is it says you have to name your location, and then it says you have to provide an address for that location that you've just named, and that address can be anything. Yeah. So it doesn't just have to be the physical location that you're at right now. It can be like a location in India for me, for instance, or a location in China for Andrea and Judy. And we can name that anything, and that location will then be created.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that seems like low-hanging fruit to potentially.
It sure is. It sure is. As long as like the postal code is valid, you can use just about any location.
Yeah. So this is just basically the worry that we have in this line of like location. This is what I wrote. The location in users' mind. So basically, whatever it is. Just type them manually and then into Instagram, Facebook. They're just not gonna do fact check at all. They're not gonna limit it at all.
Mm-hmm. I remember that being a thing. Oh, let's see if I can actually come up with the actual example. I feel like it was when there were people protesting the pipeline whose name I can't think of right now.
Keystone?
What?
Keystone?
Was it Keystone?
Or was it the Dakota one?
The Dakota one.
Uh-huh.
I can't think of the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were saying, and I don't know if any of this was true, but they were saying that people's geotags were being used to identify who was at the protests so that law enforcement could, interview them or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then like people started flooding those like locations, right? Everybody was checking in from all over the place so that it was no longer useful information.
Right.
So like there's interesting, like weird arms race kind of stuff happening.
Yeah.
Between people who want to use this location data in a meaningful way and people who don't want you to use the location data in a meaningful way. Right. Anyway, that's all a side note.
Yeah,
so
and that's why
my assumption, and I don't know if we know if this is true or not, but my assumption is as soon as you turn that fire hose of geographic information on, it's collecting it, whether you're actually tagging it or not.
Right.
Right. So even if you had never tagged Glover Park, it knows where you are. Yeah. So that was going to be my next question: is what evidence do we have about what users think about this, like geo-targeting of advertisements? Is this helpful to them because they're getting information that is more useful than a general blanket advertisement, or do they dislike it because it's kind of creepy?
Right. So there was a study that we looked at that looks at this specifically. Why users would accept mobile phone location tracking and be willing to use geotags. And it says that, this is a survey from 2019, it says that more than half of respondents feel comfortable with apps tracking their geolocation, which you would be surprised by because a lot of people are concerned about the privacy, but they're like, okay, it's fine that these apps are tracking my location in order to receive more efficient and personalized service. And that's why they say that social media users are open to actively or passively sharing their geographical location through apps. And another study says that people actually, like Andrea said, people enjoy tagging posts on Instagram and they find it rewarding. So.
All right, very interesting, guys. Did you have other stuff you wanted to talk about?
I think one question that we had was, where would you see this project going forward towards? Because this is what we've done so far, but what would you suggest we do in the future to take this project forward?
I think getting more on, so if you go back to your like original socio-technical map, I feel like I have a very good understanding of the central node, the Instagram node. I would love to see more on the user node and on the advertiser node. So like, how are they thinking about the geotagging elements, right? Like how does this, do advertisers love this? Do they wish it didn't exist? How do they use it? Is it worth their money and time and all of that kind of stuff? And users like you suggested anecdotally, it seems like people like this function. You have some research to back that up. Are there examples of negative user interactions with this, like stalking and stuff like that? I could imagine being problematic, or harassment in general. Things along those lines. So kind of getting at those kind of, either side of it. I think the platform element of it is well articulated. Getting more insights from those other two nodes, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and then I just looked through our questions. So I know we talked a little bit about our misinformation a little bit, but do you as a scholar has more like insight of, because I think you're pretty expertise in misinformation. So do you see any where that we can go to explore more on this?
I think it's a really interesting question. So this was actually a provocative question that a recent person that gave a talk at Georgetown, Laura Denardis, who is at American University, we were talking and she asked if I had ever measured or, worked on the idea of misinformation of things instead of like content.
Right.
And I think this is the sort of thing that she's trying to get at, right? Like it's not someone like saying something that's not true exactly, but like sort of it is. And that line between like funny and untrue, I think is, something that we deal with a lot in misinformation, right? That distinction between humor and satire and somebody just lying is a really difficult line
Right.
to deal with as a researcher, and just, you know, from ethical perspective, right? Like trying to make rules around things that are very mushy, and allow people to do fun things, but not allow them to do things that are going to hurt other people or make the user experience bad for everyone, right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of the question, is where you draw that line. And, you know, there are lots of reasonable places to draw that line. I think if you're concerned about misinformation of place, or whatever we want to call that, that's an easy thing to turn off, right? Is just don't make it user generated anymore. And pull it from existing GPS to map, you know, data sets. And if it's not in there, then you don't get to tag it, right? Like, that seems like an easy thing to do. And then obviously have that, you know, it has to match where your phone is actually saying you are, in order for you to be able to tag yourself into a certain place. But that is limiting in certain ways, right? Like, the example I gave earlier of the people trying to protect people from getting harassed by the police, that doesn't happen if you don't get to lie about where you are. So, I don't think there's a clear answer on like, oh, obviously the right thing to do is just shut it all down or just let people do whatever they want. You know, like, I don't know. There's not a good answer there.
Right.
Sorry, that's not a useful answer at all.
That was super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of think about the complexity here, and then the different forces of like how people would think. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking out the time to listen to us, to ask us questions, to answer our questions.
It's a great
Thanks for
project.
listening to us.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing it with me.
Yeah, thank you
And for educating me about Instagram.
We don't know much, but we're trying our best.